Hello, I'm the Angry Spork. When two characters are renowned for their incredible strength, it's natural to wonder who would win if they ever had to fight. Today, I'm taking issue with the Incredible Hulk vs. Superman, a more focused matchup compared to the Marvel vs. DC event or the brief spat in the Spider-Man crossover. Let's see if this comic takes us up, up, and away, or makes us want to smash puny riders!
The cover has a nice painted look to it, depicting what I suppose is Superman punching a portion of rock held by the Hulk to pieces. Still a sizable chunk left, though. One thing to note is that the designs seem to heavily incorporate some older interpretations, like the green guy's flat top and wide forehead, and Soup's looking almost like he jumped right from one of the old Max Fleischer cartoons. I absolutely dig it, though given this is from 1999, I'd wager it was mostly artist prerogative, that artist being Steve Rude, who's joined on the book proper by Al Milgrom and Steve Oliff, with Roger Stern writing the story. Double lives. We begin with Lois Lane watching a show called Legacy, which is doing an episode on the Hulk, with the usual man or monster question and pointing out how, despite being considered a menace, he's still a founding member of the Avengers. Lane even snarks about how they're considered Earth's mightiest heroes, when their ranks don't include her super husband, who flies in through the window after a slow day of averting a couple natural disasters. Seeing the program for himself, Clark laments his inability to help Bruce Banner, but his wife reminds him no one had any reason to suspect the Doctor was the rampaging brute, even remarking how Clark's own glasses wouldn't work if people thought the Man of Steel had a secret identity.
Which is kind of the standard counter to the argument of how people don't realize Clark Kent is Superman. Sure, we, the audience, think it's obvious because of our perspective, but most people in that world probably haven't had much reason to think Soups covertly walks around as some rando, especially a journalist. But I'll get into that later.
Yeah, I know I already mentioned it, but man, the Fleischer is strong in this panel. Anyway, Clark is pondering how similar he and Bruce are, in particular that their lives were changed by explosions. So we get another recitation of his origin, then on Banner's, who was caught in a gamma bomb explosion to save one Rick Jones. Compared to being hunted by the military, Soups considers himself lucky to have been raised by the Kents. You know, the good versions. We flash back several years prior to an underground sanctuary where Banner is waking from a nightmare of being chased by his giant alter ego, when Rick Jones enters, having heard him screaming. The kid tries to calm him down, suggesting they've got the bruiser under control, and Bruce is changed off panel. According to Rick's inner monologue, not only has a sudden change like this not happened in months, it's never happened in the daytime.
In earlier Hulk stories, it's true that he would typically come out only at night, for a while at least. It's not too surprising, since part of his characterization is that he's considered a monster, and nighttime excursions fits in with tradition of various mythical menaces that emerge only when the moon is full, or at least after the sun has set. You know, like in the cases of vampires, werewolves, Bill Maher.
Big Green doesn't like being cooped up in puny Banner's lab, and even less being told what to do, so he brushes the kid aside and leaps his way across the desert. Meanwhile, Clark Kent is at an unnamed university, talking to a professor about his latest invention, a seismograph that can detect seismic fluctuations so minute that it could be able to predict earthquakes before they happen. Machine begins detecting a series of mini-tremors across New Mexico, one after another, until it explodes. Clark, of course, saves the prof, who figures he just needs to tinker with the device a bit more. Kent gets the feeling there may be a job for Superman. A barbecue outside an Arizona general store gets an unexpected guest in a hungry Hulk, who's quick to help himself to the grilled chicken. And let's take a moment to appreciate this guy in an ill-fitting shirt posing on a rock. At first glance, you'd think he was in the middle of something he'd post to Snapchat. In truth, he's dramatically pointing out the dramatic arrival of Superman on a different rock. He hops down, but an unimpressed Hulk immediately starts swinging, thinking he doesn't get enough recognition for his own heroics. He knocks Soups through the nearby store, fortunately avoiding the people inside. Soups tries to subdue the angry brute, grabbing him from behind, yet inexplicably somehow gets tossed upwards in front of the Hulk, who's posed as if he's thrown his body back.
Uh-huh. Okay. I'll let him know. Yeah, apparently physics took a sick day on that panel.
Soups manages to stop himself around Earth's orbit, it looks like, indicating that his opponent is not only surprisingly fast, but the strongest individual he's ever encountered. He flies back to the ruined festivities, where among the reeling attendees only one child saw where Hulk went with the rest of the food, in the direction of the Continental Divide. Between not-so-jolly green speed and high winds covering any heat trail, Soups loses him, and figures he could locate his target from the Daily Planet. Or maybe that's an excuse for free coffee and air conditioning. Lois sees him researching the Hulk, and not wanting to lose again, like when Clark got the first exclusive with the Man of Steel, she goes to Perry about her idea for a story on the Hulk. When Clark later discovers that he's been outscooped and he can no longer use the assignment as a cover, he devises a plan B, expand his seismologist story to a series on American scientists, with the hook to draw in readers being interviewing Bruce Banner, who'd previously been assigned to help track down the Hulk, thus tying it to Lois's story. Perry likes the idea and allows Clark to head to New Mexico, where Lois is already there, interviewing a sheriff that got his position by having stood up to the Hulk as a deputy. At the time, he'd responded to a house fire, but when he got there, the blaze was out, and when he saw the Jade Giant, he opened fire, but missed. He'd later discover the Hulk had torn away the side of the building, and was thankful he missed, since the bulking figure seemed to have a teenager at his side.
The most unrealistic thing about this scene is that the guy in authority is admitting that things weren't as they seemed at the time. Lord knows in real life, most people would be hitting the backfire effect in full blast. Never go full backfire effect.
Lane's interviews carry on to an FBI agent, I guess, recalling an incident with the villain Ringmaster, a soldier that was transporting Rick Jones, who was arrested on charges he doesn't recall, but they were later dropped, only for Hulk to scoop him up, and some kid with a ham radio that mentions a teen brigade and how Rick Jones helped Hulk defeat the Metal Master. Among the different interpretations of the Hulk, Rick Jones is the common thread Lois resolves to find. Speaking of, he finds his cucumber-colored comrade and, using a machine from Banner's lab, lures his friend with a holographic duplicate. Or, as he put it, some mirage.
Did Hulk raid the clearance section of men's slacks at the local Target? Because I kind of find it weird that the actual Hulk has blue pants instead of purple. Maybe they just wanted to indicate that this one was true blue.
Using a handy slingshot, Rick manages to get a tranquilizer into Hulk's mouth, reverting him to the humble doctor yet again. With this latest hulking out spurred by a bad dream, Banner needs to head back to his cave to run some tests. But unfortunately, that's a no-go. Thunderbolt Ross is meeting with some bigwig and wants Banner on base immediately. Fortunately, Rick has a spare change of clothes in his very conspicuous bright red car with flames on the side. He drops his friend off at the base as Clark Kent introduces himself and talks about his article creating an interest in science. But Thaddeus Ross puts that on hold, furious about Banner's absence while he's hosting a corporate VIP, Lex Luthor, greeting Bruce alongside his assistant Happerson and Ross's daughter Betty, acting as a guide for the base. Lex wastes no time schmoozing, heaping compliments on Banner, and whisks him away, leaving Kent to wonder if Luthor's presence has anything to do with his vow to destroy Superman, and the general worrying that another of his scientists might be plucked away by an industrialist.
What? Leave behind the dry, arid climate and high-volume verbal abuse? Who would ever dream of doing such a thing?
Rick is at a diner trying to get a date with one of the waitresses, and, you know, those outfits are one thing, but the panty shot is pretty self-indulgent. None of the art previously has been that suggestive, so I don't know why they take that route now. Anyway, he's giving his order, which includes the DC Cola brand Soda, drunk by a Marvel character that's like coconut Pepsi can, when Lois Lane approaches in a more revealing outfit than she had before, looking for Rick Jones. The man in question quickly admits who he is, leaving his prospective date to leave in a huff. But then Lane says she's a reporter and wants to know about his green friend. Maybe she should have left that out because Rick drives off, leaving her day and a half's worth of tracking in the dust. But wouldn't you know it, Superman is there ordering a root beer float. He's getting a line on the Hulk and heard from Clark that Lois was in town. She doesn't get any happier when she learns Luthor is in town, and when Superman flies off without her after finishing his dessert, telling her he hopes she tells him if she uncovers anything. He passes the military base, noting how LexCorp's contract must have afforded him access, but Banner is being kept in an area blocked by his X-ray vision. As we see, he's showing off the Gamma Gun, a weapon used to repel an invasion by alien Toadmen. An impressed Luthor tempts him with a job at his company, but Bruce hears his office phone ring.
Hello? No, there's no Seymour Butts here, and... Ah, dang it. 7 PhDs, and I fall for that every time.
Really, it's Jones letting him know about his run-in with a reporter asking about the Hulk. Having spoken with Kent earlier, Bruce finds this rather odd, but then sees Betty Ross with Luthor, so stresses caution with his friend as he cuts their call short. He bumps into Kent, literally, who assures him Lex left alone after speaking with the Rosses. In his limo, Happerson confirms he photographed the Gamma Gun's control surface, and Luthor tells him he'll need to procure certain items while the Mogul has dinner with Banner and the Rosses. He suspects that the Hulk was either a creation of Banner's or that the scientists brought him to Earth. In any event, he wants to utilize the creature's power against Superman.
Okay, so if anyone had money on Lex Luthor showing up in this story just to tour a military base for funsies, you've officially lost the pool.
In Banner's lab, Clark carries on his interview, where we discover Hulk was pardoned after helping stop Metal Master, so tracking efforts on him have since ceased. Bruce plays dumb about the brute's origins, but when the tussle with Superman gets brought up and the threat to innocent lives, the scientist reels, saying he's not feeling well, which isn't entirely a lie since he's struggling to keep another transformation at bay. He takes a tranquilizer while Kent takes his leave, leaving a lonely nerd to sulk in his lab. Later, he's with Thaddeus, Betty, and Luthor, watching a reel of Hulk busting out of an elaborate trap, exerting more than 25 tons of force to escape.
This is why no one likes it when General Ross picks what to watch for movie night.
Betty, having a few scary encounters with the creature, is unnerved by the footage. Banner tells her there's only a few more minutes to endure, while Luthor takes her hand and suggests what could be accomplished if his power were to be brought under control. This is watched by Lois through a pair of binoculars, all too familiar with the kind of charm Lex uses, and decides her next interviewee will be Betty Ross.
I'm not quite familiar enough with the older Hulk stories to know if Betty has, a job on the base that would require her to be there, or if it's just because she's the general's daughter. And if that's the case, fine. It's by no means outlandish. What I'm confused about is why she's being subjected to this footage that is obviously upsetting to her when it's really only in relation to a businessman's contract with the armed forces. So the only answer I can come up with is that the plot demands it.
After his guests leave, Luthor contacts Happerson, who says Operation Decoy is ready, but with Lane and Superman seen in the area, they should exercise caution. Luthor is curious, but considers them little more than a few extra pieces on the chessboard. For now, he's going to figure out how to use Bruce Banner's attraction to Betty to control him, and maybe the Hulk too. The following day, Lois drives up to Betty on the street and asks to talk, and next panel, Betty's in the car chatting it up. Wow, that was easy. When asked about the Hulk, Betty says she'd been taken hostage by the monster, and while it was scary, she detected a hint of sadness.
Big people feel pain too.
Suddenly, a twister appears in the road ahead, too big to be a dust devil, and something is inside. Something green and mean.
Hulk need ride! Believe it or not, Hulk's Volvo broke down a mile back, and Hulk not getting any cell reception.
At the base, Clark is pressing Banner about his Hulk-related work, as it's what'll attract his readers. When mention of his Gamma Bomb arises, Bruce becomes much more somber, acknowledging that while he never intended to develop such destructive weapons, He lives with the deadly potential of his creations every waking moment. It's actually a really good scene, especially the shimmer of Hulk and his coffee, and it feels like it's actually getting Banner across very sympathetically. He asks if Kent can keep a secret just as the reporter's cell phone rings. Yeah, I figured they were going for pre-cell phone era in this story, but sliding timescales and all that. It's Lois saying the Hulk flattened her rental car and took off with Betty. Clark and a fairly confused Banner leave in separate ways, as the latter is getting a ride from Rick, and Luthor just laughs, grasping his sides laughing. Come on, you're tricking a nerd, it's not that funny. After assisting in getting the totaled car hauled away, because priorities, Superman picks up a heat trail and takes off, telling Lois to stay with the deputies. Elsewhere, Rick is curious what their next move will be with a Hulk impersonator. But fortunately, the real deal has just emerged. He jumps out, busting one of the car's tires, and starts leaping around, looking to deal with his doppelganger. Detected by scanners put in place by Luthor, a guidance laser is activated. Basically a giant laser pen and Hulk is the cat, leading him directly to an unconscious Betty and his double.
Get away from her! No, girl belongs to Hulk now.
Me, true Hulk. Behold Hulk's poor grammar and appropriately purple tattered pants.
As the two duke it out, Lex is watching from the small device in his hand, willing to sacrifice the millions it costs to build a Hulkbot if it means fanning the flames of the real deal's anger. Soups arrives just when his foe wanted, after the machine duplicate had been smashed to pieces, so there's only one green mug to punch through multiple rock formations. For good measure, he spins him around, cartoon style, and throws him, somehow causing him to bounce off multiple cacti.
Okay, the spinning effect was one thing, but Hulk just went through solid rock several times. What are those plants made of that the very same bruiser just bounces off them like a pinball?
Kal-El checks in on Miss Ross, who says she was grabbed by something metal, and suddenly Superman is holding the robot Hulk's arm. I guess he picked it up on his way, but missed it when he first arrived. I've heard of giving a hand in marriage, but this is ridiculous. A medical chopper is inbound, so Superman leaves Betty in their care so he can make amends with the Hulk. He catches up and tries talking about a truce. So Hulk stuffs his mouth with cactus needles and shoots them rapid fire at Superman like some kind of Gatling gun.
Roger Stern, nothing. This thing was ghost-written by Tex Avery. Literally ghost-written since he died in 1980. Or did he?
But the fun doesn't stop there. Thunderbolt Ross and his troops show up and open fire with guns and missiles, hoping Superman is as bulletproof as they say. The combatants crash into one of the trucks carrying the missiles, which Hulk starts hurling at Superman. He dodges them easily enough, and uses his heat vision to disable their impact detonators, rendering them inert. As their brawl intensifies, Luthor rides up, nonchalant-like, and suggests Ross use a certain weapon already at his disposal. With the Man of Steel letting loose more than usual and knocking Hulk into a nearby mountain, which doesn't last long, the Gamma Gun is being prepped. Luthor assures the General that Happerson can operate it because he studied it under Banner's supervision. If it stopped a whole invasion, the weapon should be able to take care of the Hulk. As for Superman, he should be fine. The gun is fired, hitting its targets a mile away, stopping them in their tracks. Soups figures Luthor pulled the trigger, supporting his claims they've been played. Hulk, familiar enough with Banner's tech, says the beam could kill everything within 500 miles, not just them. And that's all it takes for Hulkster to agree to play nice. Though warned the core is overheating, Luthor demands more power, like he just binged an entire season of Home Improvement.
Are you crazy? Indicators are all red.
So are Christmas lights. Do you turn them off just because you're keeping them up in May, or they might cause a nuclear explosion? Where's your Christmas spirit, General?
Fortunately, Superman had enough strength and precision to hurl Hulk right at the gun. Ross orders a full evacuation as the three make their escape with mere seconds until detonation, with the only consolation that Hulk will die as well. Superman arrives to stop Luthor and his advisor, saying his green sparring partner is taking enough of the explosion that they don't need to run any further for cover. And if you look closely, you can see Ross standing casually, looking at the blast, so I guess he's trusting Big Blue that Hulk has potentially sacrificed himself. Outside the base, Rick Jones discovers his friend actually survived the devastation. Apparently, Hulk found his way to an access tunnel and changed back into Banner from all the released gamma energy, and seems to recall Hulk enjoying smashing that gun, and possibly finding an ally in the brute. Soon after, Superman is showing off the robot Hulk's head to Lois, proving that it was the one that she encountered with Betty, though no sign of Hulk Classic in the wreckage.
And we all remember the golden rule of comics, that if there's no sign of them, they're totally dead, gone forever, never to return.
The robot was built using modified LexCorp technology, and Luthor himself promises to launch an investigation to find the culprit responsible.
Why waste the time and money, Mr. L? We both know it was you. Epperson, I'm fired, aren't I? Yes, but only after I have you killed. Oh, I feel I should tell Human Resources about this. I hate my life.
Thunderbolt Ross is not only aghast at the mechanical green fraud, but that the real one seemed to save his daughter. Bruce arrives to see if Betty is all right, and says he doesn't much miss his gamma gun, intending to build something better and safer.
Maybe leave the gamma radiation out of it this time, Doc. You really haven't had a whole lot of luck going down that road.
Luthor swears to find another way to end his Kryptonian foe. Lois rubs her sensational story in Clark's face, and naturally he can only congratulate her. We transition back to the present, where Clark mentions how much harder Banner's life got when his secret was revealed. Despite it all, he and Betty married, though that didn't stop tragedy from striking further. As Superman wonders where the Doctor is now, the comic ends on a man watching the same series through a store window, as it details Betty's death from radiation poisoning and Bruce's subsequent disappearance. Reports still arise of a green man monster as Bruce walks down an empty street, with an ethereal image of his alter ego hanging over him.
And that was The Incredible Hulk versus Superman. It definitely had its sillier moments, but I also felt it had a lot of serious pathos, too.
I really enjoyed the old-school vibe of the art. It felt classic, but not outdated, though I admit it felt a little odd, seeing as it was printed in 1999, but some elements felt more akin to something a decade or more before. Dialogue, mannerisms, designs, all looking like they're from a time before Clark could have a cell phone that easily fits in his pocket. Not to mention Hulk's clear, if brutish, speech patterns and references to a gamma-ray device that would aid in his transformation. It may have been a creative choice, perhaps an affectionately nostalgic one, but I don't think it really hurts the story. Though newer readers might be surprised that this design of Lex Luthor is not too familiar to them. It also seems to have its own continuity, not just because they act as if Marvel and DC have always shared a world, but it makes no reference to the big Versus crossover from 1996.
If it had, I'm sure Superman would have called in the aid of the well-established and seasoned interdimensional hero, Access. You completely forgot who that is, didn't you?
The story suggests parallels between Hulk and Superman, but it feels more underlying than anything, not something particularly prominent in the narrative. It does a great job of showing inner sorrow for some characters and sympathy from others, but aside from explosions, super strength, and being married to army brats, I really don't see much to equate the two thematically. The central fight is a little more cartoonish than I expected, also a bit short. I would have liked to have seen more of the actual brawling, but hey, I've been more disappointed by other fights. Soups does acknowledge Hulk is no pushover, which is good because a one-sided fight would not have been as much fun. There were some conveniences, in particular how Hulk took the brunt of the gamma explosion, enough that you didn't have to be that far away to stay safe, yet he somehow found time to find an escape hatch. That seemed very much like yada-yadaing things for a death fake-out.
One kind of tangent I wanted to go on here was something pointed out in the beginning of the comic. It touched on the effectiveness of Clark's disguise, how it's not just the glasses, but also people's perception of Superman. And this got me thinking.
Ask real-life people what they would do with Superman's powers, and you'll get some answers like they would fight crime, help after disasters, stuff Superman does anyway. But other responses, if they were honest, would be more to use their X-ray vision to peep on people, or some other lewd purpose, force their will on others, seek revenge on past wrongdoings, fly around and mope. And it makes you wonder, how long would they stay in their civilian lives if they could fly around and do practically whatever they want? These answers actually make Clark's disguise brilliant. He's a simple farm boy, modest, civil, polite, with a moral compass that prevents him from indulging in his baser impulses. What we find boring and mundane, he actually wants. And some can't conceive of having that much power and not wanting to use it to its full potential, for good or ill.
Some people seem to think that Superman would do what they would do with his powers, but the fact that he doesn't only helps keep his identity secret. Probably not what Roger Stern was going for, but I thought I'd get that out there anyway. So, this comic is worth the read, and while there could have been more to the actual fight, if you ask me, it's enjoyable and doesn't take itself too seriously. So, check it out if you want. I'm the Angry Spork, and man, have I got issues.